We are joined now by Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell, who was also at the courthouse today.
Yeah, and look, the simple scorecard reporting is not a single point, relevant point, was scored against Michael Cohen on cross-examination. To everyone's surprise, the demeanor held up, because that was the suspense of last night. The suspense was, wow, that's the most remarkable version of Michael Cohen we've ever seen. You know, those of us who watched him in the courtroom yesterday. But can he do it on cross when he's challenged? He's such a defensive guy. He's such a combative guy in every other environment. But he was contained, as most people are, by the pressures and the confines of the courtroom, especially the witness stand. You know, you got to remember that when lives end up in a criminal courtroom and you are the key witness for a criminal prosecution, yours is a broken life, because you are here as the eyewitness to your friend's murder, and you are part of a tragedy yourself. And so Michael Cohen's life was broken by all of this. And what you saw on the witness stand was this broken man. And I love some of what we saw from the courtroom art. There's the capturing of Michael Cohen's mournful face, which is what this was. This was someone mourning for his own mistakes, mourning for his own terrible mistakes that he's made in his life, and then describing eventually what was a family intervention to get him to turn away from what was literally his life of crime with Donald Trump and save what could be left of his life by the simple course of telling the truth to prosecutors. Doing time in prison, it turns out, is going to be a consequence of this. And, you know, and Chris, one thing I'd say about Michael Cohen's pauses on answering questions is I took every one of those to actually be a smart moment. And that just might be, you know, the jury won't be thinking the way I am about it, but having seen a lot of witnesses, especially lawyer witnesses, what he's doing is he's listening to every word you just said and deciding how to answer it, whether he should answer it, whether he should ask for clarification. And it never felt to me like there was something weird about the pause, but it could to a jury who doesn't know that is what I see going through his mind.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of this, there's a little bit of this thing happened having been through depositions. You know, there's a little bit of this, a question is asked, and you sort of quibble the characterization, so you brush it back a little bit. So that Blanche comes back. Said, at one point there was a big standoff. We said, was that a lie? He says, well, it wasn't truthful. Yes, but was it a lie? Well, if you want to call it a lie, he's like, I'm not asking if you want me to call it a lie. I'm asking if you call it a lie. So there's a few of those standoffs. But again, yes, I think that was intentional on Cohen's part, right? Because he is a lawyer, he is being careful, and he does understand the weight. And I think that last point, you know, the weight of all this, which again, when we were talking yesterday and everyone was talking, is like, is this going to last? It was very clear today, that kind of spectral presence that he had, this sort of gaunt, broken guy who's, you know, that remained throughout. Rachel, obviously, you were following Wrapped closely today, I'm sure. What was your big takeaway?
My big takeaway was, is this all there is from the defense? I mean, I think that, you know, the defense is under no obligation to put any witnesses forward at all. Lawrence has been very articulate and persuasive in saying that there's 0% chance that they will put the defendant, that they will put their own client, Donald Trump, on the stand in his own defense. But we don't know if they'll put anybody. And so if they don't, this is their defense. The cross-examination of Michael Cohen is the defense's case. And to get what Blanche was able to get out of him today, there was nothing, which either makes me feel like they must be incredibly confident in their ability to try to get a mistrial ruling here, or something surprising is going to happen on Thursday, or they just didn't bring it, because there really was nothing, especially when you consider that when the prosecution laid out their case at the outset, they basically said, this is a documents case. We are going to put Michael Cohen on the stand. He's a very controversial guy, and for good reason, and you're going to hear about why. But everything that we are going to need to prove to you in order for you to come back with a guilty verdict will be bolstered by corroborating evidence, by multiple witnesses, and by documents. And thus far, they've spent the last couple of weeks doing that, giving all the documents, authenticating all the documents, giving all the corroborating witness testimony. They get to their culminating witness, Michael Cohen, and he performs perfectly as a witness for them. He doesn't lose his cool, as you guys were saying. He answers all the right questions. He doesn't seem to, go into weird soliloquies or sidebars that might be picked apart on cross-examination. They hand him over to the defense today after lunch. And I have to tell you, I was on tenterhooks. I thought this was it. This is how we're going to see it. They're going to keep Donald Trump out of prison. And it was just nothing. So maybe Thursday's going to be something. But otherwise, it looks like they're just not mounting a defense at all.
I was struck by the same thing. Not only that's, where's the beef? But also the sort of spaghetti against the wall nature of the line of questioning from the defense, Rachel. Just they tried to paint Cohen as a bunch of different things: an unreliable narrator, or a grifter, or someone who was in it for himself, selfish,
or a spurned lover,
someone who was obsessed with Donald Trump, and then when he was cast aside for not getting a position in the White House, not getting Reince Priebus's job, he was intent on destroying Donald Trump. Did you find any of those characterizations particularly effective?
I might have found any one of them effective had the prosecution not laid all of them out in advance to tell us, put them all in context and tell us all what they mean. I mean, I didn't know that Michael Cohen had called the defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, a crying little swear word. The very first thing that he led with, I didn't know that he had complained about Trump's defense lawyers in a TikTok video or something. That was new. Okay, is that going to change my view about what Michael Cohen brings to this case? No. But the prosecution did a good job at eliciting from all of the other witnesses, oh yeah, I couldn't stand Michael Cohen. Oh yeah, Michael Cohen called himself a lawyer. Michael Cohen, a fixer, he only fixes things that he broke. And we got all of this stuff, all of the ad hominem, anything you could want about Michael Cohen we've already had. And then they put it all in context. Here's what he was when he served Donald Trump. Here is when he stopped serving Donald Trump. Here is what he has done since. Here are the sins he has committed and the way he has atoned. It's all been out there in advance. So for Todd Blanche to be up there as Donald Trump's defense lawyer saying, oh, but Michael Cohen, didn't you lie to Congress? The jury must be sitting there thinking, yeah, we heard the explanation for that already, and we know what that is. Why are you bringing it up again?
The thing that struck me today on that point, on the cross, is, again, I do think, there are plausible stories to tell here. Like, for instance, right, when they're spending a lot of time on his podcast, and the fact that you sell, there's a moment where all the different merchandise you sell on your website or your associated websites to show Donald Trump in prison and send him to the big house, not the White House. And is that about President Trump? And yes, it is. Okay. There's a story that tells us this guy is so out for revenge, he's going to say whatever it takes to put him behind bars, which is what's being implied. But that part at least was legible to me. There were large parts of the cross today that I could not follow. And I think I'm pretty good at following stuff generally. I followed the direct. And part of this, I'll just say, is like a small color thing. And this is something we can talk about with our legal experts. If Lawrence, you want to weigh in. In the direct, all of the evidence is being put up for all of us to see, which is extremely helpful because you see the documents. Here's the pay stub for your May invoice. During the cross, when they would present a document to Michael Cohen to refresh his memory, it was not admitted into evidence broadly, which meant he's looking at a screen. You don't see what the document is. Again, this is intentional. And it means that it's really hard to follow the whole thing. There were long lines of questioning where I was like, I'm just lost here.
What are you talking about?
I was like, what are we doing with the phones?
Right.
Why are we on the phone still? I don't get the phones thing.
And it got a little worse because Michael Cohen's looking at a document that none of us can see, and he's saying, you are misrepresenting what's on this document. Okay, so it's not working on any level. But hey, welcome to the representation of a guilty client. This is what it looks like when a criminal defense lawyer has a client who did exactly what Stormy Daniels says he did. This is what it looks like when you're representing a client who did indeed conspire to create false business records. They don't have, if they had something better, you would have heard it in the first 10 minutes. They don't have anything better. You're not going to hear anything better. And the game is, and it's a legitimate legal game, is they're going to try to create not just reasonable doubt, but presidential level reasonable doubt. They're going to want you to bring a higher level of reasonable doubt here because this man was president, so you can't possibly convict him on the word of that man.
Right.